Captivating and action-packed, the Blood and Ash series by #1 New York Times bestselling author Jennifer L. Armentrout is a sexy, addictive series, perfect for fans of Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros. Chosen at birth to usher in a new era, Poppy's life is not hers. A maiden in solitary waiting for the day of her ascension, Poppy would rather be with the gods fighting the evil that took her family. The entire kingdom rests on her shoulders when Hawk, a god bound to protect, enters her life. He tempts her with the forbidden, a kingdom. Blood and Ash, a thrilling, steamy escape, available in print, ebook, and audiobook.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames. And this is
A Little Bit Culty.
Cults are commonplace now. From fandoms to fads, we're examining them all. We look at what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real culty stories told directly by the people who lived through them, because we want you to learn a few things that we've had to learn the hard way.
For example, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you might be prime recruitment material, and who knows, you could already be in a cult. If you're not aware of your programming, you're probably being programmed, so keep listening to find out.
We'll talk about all sorts of topics on the show, but be aware, this podcast might contain stories that could be alarming to some of our listeners, so please check our show notes for more detailed descriptions and take care of yourself.
Subscribe to our Patreon for Thursday bonus episodes, Q&A, and all sorts of exclusive content. That's patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Welcome to Season 7 of A Little Bit Culty.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to my love.
Welcome back to A Little Bit Culty, everybody.
We promised you some obscure cults this year, and we are delivering. Today's cult is one you probably have not heard of, but it will also probably sound familiar. Gurus, meditation, a promised path to enlightenment, a path that's found through, surprise, surprise, expensive courses.
We're talking about Bright Path, aka Ishayas Ascension, a new-agey group that promotes connecting with God through meditation. To them, though, meditation means abandoning your sense of self. They believe our thoughts, emotions, and bodies aren't reality because only God is real. They think who we are doesn't matter, and that our personal identities must be broken down to find enlightenment. Or something.
What could possibly go wrong, right? The Ishayas also believe that Jesus himself learned these teachings from immortal monks in the Himalayas. Apparently, he tried to pass them on to humanity without success, and now it's the Ishayas' job to enlighten the masses.
The current guru calls himself Maharishi Krishnananda Ishaya.
I'm going to do this one.
Okay.
I got this one. The current guru calls himself Maharishi Krishnananda Ishaya.
That's good. Okay.
Thank you. I got it.
He hasn't made the headlines, but his leadership methods are textbook culty.
Our guest today spent years in Krishnananda's inner circle, almost as long as I spent in NXIVM, actually. Her name's Cristina Coello, and she's here to tell you how quiet, under-the-radar cults can be just as harmful as the famous ones.
Vanilla cults, she calls them. I don't mind vanilla, but...
You get the idea.
Yeah. We'll get into the subtle mind control, the slow loss of identity, and how painful it can be to realize the path you're on doesn't lead to enlightenment.
It's a good one, and one we've been meaning to do for a while. So let's welcome Cristina to the show. Cristina, welcome to A Little Bit Culty.
Hi, thank you, Sarah.
So good to finally see your face. How long have you been out for? How long have you been free?
End of 2021, so 3 years.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's still fresh.
It's still fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're well enough to be speaking out, and that's great. Let's go back to the beginning.
Ishayas Ascension. What can you tell us about it? What do they believe? How'd you get involved?
What did you sign up for? Tell us about you then.
Okay, well, I signed up for these meditation techniques that are supposed to be super effective, that because you can also practice them with your eyes open. And the reason why it pulled me in, I actually saw it in a flyer. A lot of people heard it word of mouth, but for me, it was in a flyer. I was in Mexico. I was around 21 years old, and I was living in Monterrey, Mexico. And I went to this center, this Ramta center I used to attend to, talking about like escaping a different cult. But I love this whole Ramta thing. I don't know if you heard about it. And
Oh, yeah.
Wait. You know that Mark Vicente was in Ramtha, right?
well, I just heard it recently. I just heard it in one of his podcasts recently. So I never got too deep into it, but I went to a center and I would practice, the manifestation and all these things and reading these books. And for some reason, it all made sense to me to be superhuman or whatever. And in this center, I saw this poster and it said, we're the Ishaya monks, we're modern monks, and we live normal lives, but our mission is to heal humanity through healing ourselves. And for me, that made sense. Like for me, I was like, that's it. That's what I'm looking for. I want to heal humanity through healing myself. Like, that's wonderful. And so that's how I started. They were on my radar. And 4 years later, I took their meditation course called First Sphere course, where you meet the monks and they teach you to meditate and you start practicing.
And tell us a little bit about the practice. Like, what are they teaching you to do?
They give you sentences. So it's really based on TM. I think the guy that made the Bright Path, the original guy, he's passed now, he was a TM student. And so a lot of the practice is similar to TM, whereas you get sentences that are like super secret, like a mantra, but they're not. I think in TM, you get a personalized one, and these ones are standard. So the first one is praise universe for my life, or praise God for my life, and whatever is the force of good for you. And so you have praise, gratitude, love, and compassion. And ultimately, there's like 100 techniques, but you start with 4. And basically, you close your eyes and you think this technique, and then you wait to see what happens. And you also do it with your eyes open, so you don't have to think during the day. That's the catch.
Explain that. Why don't you have to think during the day? What does that mean?
Well, it means you if you don't think, you're present, right? Like that's the premise. It's like if you're off in your thoughts, you're not present. You're missing out the present moment. So if you're in the first stages, they explain it differently, as I presume other cults do too. And if you're more in already joining in, already going deep, already attending the long-term retreats, it's explained in a different way. Right? But so basically when you learn, it's like, you don't have to be overthinking. Every time the mind is kind of, you're running with it, with all these horrible scenarios, you just use your ascension attitude, which is what the meditation techniques are called, and you come back to the present moment. And so that's, in the meditation world, that was the catch, that you can also do it with your eyes open.
So it was like more of just a daily, like full-time practice.
Yes, that's exactly what it becomes.
Yeah. So when you joined, you were 29. You'd heard about it, but it took you a few years to actually take a program.
I heard about it when I was 21. I learned these techniques, the First Sphere, it's called, this weekend course, when I was 25. And I went and did a 6-month retreat when I was 29.
Okay. So you use that marker as when you joined.
Yes, when I kind of became a proper cult member, yes.
Right.
So between 25 and 29, you were just like using the tools in your life and you weren't immersed in the program.
And yeah, exactly. So I moved to Spain back then to study acting, and I really loved the practice. It made me feel super, super good. It gave me a lot of joy, and it was a good like stress management technique. So I really, really, for some reason, I was looking for enlightenment and spiritual freedom, and everything they portrayed to me was that. Mm-hmm. Every time you spoke to one of them, they would feel so loving and so happy and so whatever I aspired to be. So when I moved to Barcelona, there was nobody practicing the technique there. So I started creating courses and bringing teachers in from England, which was the closest teachers back then, for other people to learn, so I could have a community to meditate with. So I was very involved, but I had my own life, and I still had my direction, my passions, and it was more like a sidekick, like a side dish.
Did you feel like that was helping you with your goals?
I did. I to be honest, I did. I did it. I felt it was helping me to be more relaxed and more present. And I remember, like, before a play, when we were in acting school, and you guys know how everybody gets. Everybody's like super stressed and high energy and drama starts kicking in and everybody would freaking the fuck out. And I would just sit in the back and meditate for 5 minutes and I would feel like I got it under control and that I could direct that energy in a way. So it did help me a lot. That's why I used it, and that's
Right.
why I wanted more people around me to do that.
And were you successful in building a community?
I was. Yes, I was. Unfortunately, I was. I was really dedicated. I was really committed. And I maybe organized like 5 courses. There was no teachers in Spain back then. And this is before the Bright Path or the Ishayas moved to Spain. They used to be in Mexico before that. So I was successful. But that's how I also met one of my dearest friends she came to teach a course. We're both out now and we're still very good friends.
Great.
But that's kind of what kept me going, right? Meeting these people that were young like me, but they lived an alternative life and they seemed to have overcome suffering, which is what ultimately I think I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. And just so our listeners can have a picture, when you say they moved from Mexico, was there a center? How many monks are we talking about here? Is there a few dozen, hundreds, thousands?
Well, the first center of the modern time of the Bright Path, when it became the Bright Path, I think was in Salmon Arm in Canada. Mm. And then they started splitting between Salmon Arm and somewhere in Mexico, near Mexico City, in a place called Tasco. And so somebody had a whole hacienda there and they ran retreats there. I was never part of this. It's just what I know. I just went there for a weekend. And then eventually the Ishayas moved to Spain.
When you say the Ishayas, though, like how many people?
It depends because the center, in the modern time of the Bright Path, the monks could live in their homes, in their houses, right? So the center is more what attracted the students to come for 6 months and then they would leave. And so teachers around, when I was a teacher...
Sorry, are teachers monks? Okay, so all teachers are monks? Okay.
Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
all teachers
and
are
you
monks.
You have to earn being a monk?
Well, you teach courses and you make money from those courses. And you have to, obviously you have to tithe to the teacher because, whatever, he deserves it apparently. So you had to give like...
What's the percentage?
10%.
Okay.
But a lot of the countries had centers and you had to give some money. It depended on the country. Right? But sometimes you had to give some admin fee or not.
Just curious, like what would a 6-month course cost?
When I was there, it cost $10,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of a deal, though.
Or euros.
Compared to Nexium.
Euros.
Oh, 10,000
Yeah.
euros?
Well, still. How much? I don't know how much was Nexium, but yeah, it was 10,000.
The 5-day was like 2,400 or 2,160 with a discount.
That's close to $2,000 a month.
Yeah, it was like $2,000 for 5 days.
No, this was less.
Yeah. It was a deal, I'm telling you. We should have done this, Nip.
Yes, you should have.
I could have been a monk. Damn it.
You could have been a modern
But
monk.
how did they decide monk is the term? Like, it feels like it's taking, the word misappropriating monks. Is that?
It's definitely misappropriating monks, don't you think? Or what do you think now?
But of course, that's what I think now. Like some of us, sometimes, some of us, once we left, we still write like ex-monk. But at some point, I'm like, were we even monks? Like, I don't think we were. I mean, we were in our hearts, right? We took vows, I took vows. I wore white. We sang pujas every day when you were in the main retreat. So I think this teaching, this guy that came up with this teaching was like a mix between TM and Vedic teachings. And also this little book from a woman called Ruby Nelson, I want to think, that it's called The Door to Everything. And she talks about praise, gratitude, and love. It's a like tiny little book. Of course, I found this out once I left, not before, right?
So the guy who started it like stole from 3 main sources, did a little like omelet.
Yes.
Little mixed bag.
And so he created this and he wrote this. There was a whole mysticism around it, right? Like you never knew if the guy went to the Himalayas or just kind of cognized and channeled that techniques. And he wrote a lot of fiction books, but a lot of people within the cult thought that these stories were real. About other planets, about the Ishayas were these old monks where Jesus went and learned. So what we learned was that this, oh God, it sounds like such a nut when I say it out loud, but it's so funny that for me, I ever believed those things, right? Like this was the teaching that Jesus followed, and he kept quiet until the world was ready to receive it. And yeah, so apparently there was many versions, right? Like one version was the dude that lived in the island of Patmos. Is it John? The one that wrote Revelations. I don't know. I'm not very like Bible savvy. So yeah, that he's the one that kept them quiet and like they were passing them down, right? So we thought we were this lineage. You talk about the lineage all the time. And that's why when you are gone, you can't teach because you've broken your relationship with this lineage
Right.
of enlightened teachers.
So you're either very special and part of the lineage, the elite lineage of the secret teachings of Jesus, or you're an ex-member and you are broken the lineage. But you're not shunned because we still love you and have lots of grace and love and blah, 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 because that's what we teach. But not really.
But we will never speak to you again.
Yes,
Because
but we still love you.
We still love you and we wish you the best. But you've lost the plot. So
Yeah.
bye.
And we'll get to that. We'll get to the leaving later. So tell me like a day in the life of Cristina in Spain when you were building the community, you were committed. Well, when did you go from bringing in teachers to being like taking a vow? How did that happen?
Well, so when I decided to join in the 6-month course, that's when you take on a teacher. That's when you take vows. Obviously, when I went in, I didn't know that you took vows. I didn't know a lot of things. And the way they do this is that when you are training as a teacher, they tell you to not break the innocence of the new people. Right? So considerate.
Yes.
So
you don't want to ruin the end of the movie for the new people.
Exactly.
You want to let them experience it themselves, right?
Exactly. So you don't want to ruin their innocence. So I arrived there and I didn't really know much. I didn't know you had to take on a teacher. I knew there was a guy. I knew him. I've met him once. And he was really interested in me because I was such a powerhouse in Spain bringing people. So he gave me a lot of attention in that meeting. He called me and he was like, I know I was called a sponsor. So it would be a sponsor if you organize courses for teachers to come and teach.
Okay. Just curious, did you get paid? Oh,
No.
Okay. So you did that for free.
Wow.
You did that for
course.
free. You
the
brought
joy of
in
it.
people, and who was making the money?
The teachers would take the money, and it depends what teachers it were. They would have to pay the center, which in some countries they would take up like almost 40% at some point, and then they would tithe the teacher. But I don't know that, right? In that point in time.
So how big is it? How many centers are there? Is it international? Is it?
It is international. The strongest point when I was in, we had 600 teachers.
Wow.
Around the world.
Wow.
Strongest was Mexico and the UK, but I think now they're like 250, which is maybe 300 tops because of the exodus that happened when we left. So a student was somebody that had started their Mastery of Self course, which is this retreat, but hadn't finished. So if you've taken on a teacher, if you've taken your first set of vows, then you're considered a student, but you can't teach. It's very tiered, and it changed every 2 years. So that it's hard to give you a full picture because it was part of this never-ending moving landscape that once you were a teacher, then you couldn't, then you could teach, then you couldn't, and people that would practice the techniques. At some point, we had 10,000 people in the database, but honestly, I don't think even 60% of them practice. It's just the people that join the course.
Do you think the confusion and the changing of the rules and all that was intentional?
I come to believe that it was. I didn't think for many, many years, but at the end, I was like, this is intentional.
I agree.
It's always, it's intentional. It's like a mindfuckery, constant mindfuckery.
And we haven't mentioned his name yet, but is this from the leader, Krishnananda? Am I saying that right?
Oh my God, you're very good at this.
Oh,
yes,
it's not my first rodeo.
It's definitely not. You would have been a great monk, Sarah. Yeah. Yes, that's from the leader, Krishnananda, which I like to refer to as Bill.
Oh, yeah. Bill.
Billy.
I'm telling you, all of these fucking leaders have these names that are like Steve, Keith, Bill, Bob. Like, come on.
I'm telling you, all our comments on social media are going to be from Keith, Bill.
I'm sorry,
Bob.
Keith, Bill, and Bob
They're coming for
listeners.
you.
I'm
They're
sorry.
coming for you.
I'm sorry. You
They're
have a
coming
name
for
that
you.
is ripe for
It's already blowing up.
cult
so.
abuse. Okay, sorry. So Bill,
Not a lot of nippies.
aka Krishnananda. Okay.
Yes. Well,
No offense.
Maharishi, sorry, Krishnananda.
But aren't there also like many other cults with Maharishis and Krishnanandas?
Yeah, because like all the Indian tradition, right?
Right.
So we all took in Sanskrit names. So my
was
name
yours?
was changed. My name was Maharani.
Maharani.
Yeah.
People call you Maha?
Maharani.
Yes.
Rani? Yeah, Maha.
Maha, yeah, or
Maha.
Maharani. Because sometimes, the instruction was don't change other people's name. It's a vibration. So if somebody call you Maha, they'd be like, no, her name is Maharani. And sometimes they would call you Maha, right? So
I got in trouble for abbreviating the Nexium, remember? I got in trouble for changing Goals and Values Lab to GVL because it was so much easier, remember? They're like, you don't change the structure of what Keith created. Blah, blah, blah.
exactly,
Anyway,
you don't. It's a
don't.
sin.
It's a sin. It's a vibrational sin. Okay,
So anyway, I'm Maharishi.
Yeah.
And it's a great teacher, right?
Yeah.
It's a teacher of teachers, or it's a great teacher, somebody that has helped somebody else transcend the veil of ignorance, or Maya, as it's called, which is the illusion.
We just did one about the Hare Krishnas.
Okay.
So that will drop in a week or two, but will have already dropped by the time people hear this. So they'll be ready for this. They'll be ready for the Maya and the
A lot of
Krishnananda.
ashnas and rajanas
Yeah.
and
Yes, Ashnas and Rashnis and Vedas. And so, yeah, we all had Sanskrit names. And so your last name, so to speak, would be Ishaya, right? So my name was Maharani Ishaya. And I completely personally changed my identity. All my social media was there. Like, that's how I introduced myself. Even some of my family members started calling me Maharani because I was like, that's my vibration, right? Like, I want to embody that. Ugh. So
Don't be embarrassed. It's okay.
No, thank you.
We could all just laugh. We just laugh at our former cult selves. You know?
Yeah.
I know. One day she'll figure it out. Give us like a day in the life of Maharani Ishaya when things were good. What was your life like?
Okay, so when things were good or great, right? So I did this 6-month retreat, and then I left I moved back to Mexico, and I lived in Monterrey, Mexico for a while. But since I was doing my course, my 6-month course, I started translating. So we would do live translation in all the meetings. And I was very good at my job. So they started hiring me to go and do it on the retreats. Because I had a life in Mexico, I couldn't just take off and go for 6 months. So I would go a month here, a month there, and I would do that. Eventually, I met my now husband. He was also a teacher, so we moved to Spain. And we had a house there it's a little town in the mountains in Spain. And there was a retreat center there that the Ishayas rented. But some of the teachers, we used to live in our own house, but you would walk to the retreat. So a day for me was get up early. If I was working on the retreat, I'm not an early morning person, make some coffee and walk down and translate a meeting. The meeting would be 1.5 to 2 hours. And then I would get back home, hang out with my friends, see people, because we always had teachers visiting. So that was something that I really, really liked, that I had friends from all over the world. There was always fresh people coming in, and it was always exciting. So you laugh, you have a great time, then you go for lunch, then you meditate for 1.5 or 2, and then I would go and do another meeting after dinner. And then you go back to your friends and hang out and laugh. That was a day.
That was a good day.
That was a good day. That was when it was a good day.
When was the first red flag in one of those good days?
Most of the red flags, during the training, during the programming process, you're taught that everything is your fault, right? It's your resistance. It's your mind making a problem. It's your ego making a problem. And so every time a conflict would come up for me, I would immediately try to do it about me. What am I not seeing? Where am I not free?
Right. What does this mean about me that I'm feeling this way?
built-in gaslighting.
Exactly. Self-gaslighting is like perfect antidote. They don't even have to do it. They don't have to gaslight you. You just do it for yourself. And so it would be, but for me, one of the first things was the amount of hours that we worked, and we weren't getting paid for it. And when I would fight for it, it took me a few years to get paid because it was about service, right? And it was, you're so lucky you get to spend free time there, Seva. And so it was about service, right? And so I would sometimes translate 7 hours a day, and I would snap. And I remember one of the times talking to one of the teachers, like losing and going, this is not right. This is not right. And the fact that I feel so afraid to speak up and to ask for what I want, like the first time I went there, I even paid for my own plane ticket, So I was paying to go and then work. So basically that's how they rolled. And unless you started asking for it, then eventually you would start getting paid. But there was a lot of people that never did. And so the red flag for me there was the fact that I was so scared to speak up, and that I was told that I wasn't a team player, which was one of the biggest manipulations that I went, from the get-go. I was like, you're not a team player. You do not a team player. Nobody would, if you were a general, Maharani in war, nobody would want to be with you because you're not a team player. And so eventually I was like, please, teacher, teach me. Teach me how to be a team player. And so I shut up.
Let's translate that to you're not being obedient enough.
Yes.
You're asking questions.
You're asking questions. You're having issues. You have your own mind.
Yeah. I'm sure that you weren't the only one. I'm sure that the morale, everything you're saying is stuff that Sarah and I can relate to, because the morale of the people who aren't getting paid for work ends up being really, really low. And that's not a sustainable model.
No.
Ever.
There was a lot of turnover. There was a lot of people that would come for 6 months and leave. And because I wanted to feel useful, but also I guess I wanted to feel special, right? I wanted to be on top. I wanted to be part of the team. So I would do everything they asked me for. And I don't think there was a lot of people that stayed and complained. So either they would leave because the conditions weren't good.
Right.
Or they were, like most of the people that worked in these retreats were very obedient, very starstruck, very the teacher knows what he's doing all the time.
So wanting to be led, and then there's also this level of, and this is not a judgment because I've just projectively in my own experience is I want it also to be accepted. So when someone say you're not a team player, you're like, no, I am a team. You want to prove them wrong, right? And also be part of the team.
Of course, after years of therapy and whatever, I've come to understand many things and my motivations for doing certain things, but I wanted to belong. And for me in that moment, I was like, this is my mission. This is my purpose. And I want to make it worthwhile.
Yes. And also you'd moved and you'd invested a lot. So there's probably
a
lot of buy-in.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Got to get your money's worth.
Yes.
Got to get your time. You got to get the payback of what you've put in.
Yes.
I'm guessing. Tell us about Krishnananda. We're teasing the name, but let's
Billy.
Bill. So
Billy.
What was Bill? What was Bill like? What was his vibe?
Billy was, when you first met him, when I first met him, I thought he was a really cool guy. He was really tall. He was older, way older than me. He must be 75 now.
Yeah, because I listened to the recording you sent, and his voice sounded old.
Yes, he is.
He's a white dude?
He's a white dude, somewhere around Philadelphia or somewhere like that.
Billy from Philly.
Billy from Philly, exactly. Yeah. And what I liked about him personally as a spiritual teacher was that he rode motorcycles, he drank, he smoked. He was the cool guy. Obviously, people didn't know he smoked and drank, right? He had 2 different personalities, the inner circle and the outer circle one. But he was really charming, really smart. So it's one of those people that now that I know narcissism, I understand much more, right? But back then, it's one of those people you could sit and banter, but also he will always win the argument. You don't even know how it happened, and you end up apologizing, even though you came with a problem yourself. So that's how he is. He's got a business background. And of course, he would tell us these grandiose stories about his background. Everything he did was fantastic and magical. And he was he worked for President Reagan, and he did this and billionaire companies. Now I really don't know how much he made these stories bigger, because I did see throughout my time how a certain story happened, and every time he told it, it became bigger and better and more embellished, and he was the hero of the story, even if he didn't participate in the original version, right? So this is kind of the things that I went, oh my God, that's narcissism? I didn't know, you know? I had no idea.
I'll tell you, a big red flag for me now is when I see a really robust bio of all these achievements, like particularly if it's someone younger, and even there's a documentary I watched when I was in quarantine, ironically, about Bill Gates, and everyone around Bill Gates was touting how great he is. And I remember that's how people talked about Keith. Nobody's challenging this narrative, and people present these bios, and a lot of people just accept them. They accept the persona at face value. And to me, I've stopped doing that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty smart. Because, I was like, everybody around him was like, he's so great. He's done so many things, and he would tell you stories about he was in Vietnam and he got shot in the face, but he didn't die. And, and everybody was entertained. He's a great storyteller. He knew how to keep an audience.
Yeah, that tracks with all these guys. Yeah.
So he had some charisma, some riz, as the kids say.
He had some riz. Obviously, he liked to surround himself with either beautiful people or rich people. Because I never knew why some people he would take such care for, and he would invite them to his house and he would give them the time of day. And some people, no matter how much they tried, they would get 5 minutes with him. And obviously, when you're in these retreats and when you're getting programmed, we learn that you create the teacher. You create the version of the teacher that you need to wake up. So if the teacher is an asshole, you created him. And he's showing you something about you that you need to look at. And then if the teacher is great, you created him as well. But then when I look at it like objectively, I'm like, well, he either like pretty girls, because most of the girls around him were pretty, or people with money, pretty much.
Hey, Culty listeners. As you probably know, Nippy and I are working on a manuscript for our first book together. And as you probably also know, maintaining control is important to us. That's why we've decided to produce our book with the Self-Publishing Agency, or TSPA. Unlike traditional publishing, where you're often left waiting for months or even years to get your story out, the Self-Publishing Agency lets you take control of your timeline. You'll have complete creative freedom with insights and guidance from pros in the publishing world. So if you're like us and you have a story or a message that's burning to be told, we highly recommend TSPA as your go-to partner. They offer everything you need, from expert editing and eye-catching cover design to marketing and distribution strategies that really make a difference. They make the entire process seamless and inspiring so you can focus on what matters most, telling your story. Go to theselfpublishingagency.com. That's the SELF publishingagency.com to start your very own publishing journey today. Enjoy.
I love a little luxury in my life. Who doesn't? But let's be honest. Luxury usually comes with a pretty steep price tag. That is, until I discovered Quince. It's quickly become our go-to for high-quality essentials that don't break the bank. I'm talking about the 100% Mongolian cashmere sweater that started at just $50. For 2 months of winter here, I've been living in mine. It's soft, cozy, but I still look like a super hot dad in it. I also grabbed some performance wear, and let me tell you, I am obsessed with my performance tech shorts. Bought 2 of them, great for shooting hoops with my son, and kind of looking cool, if I say so myself. And that's really the best part about Quince. Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They partner directly with top factories, cutting out the middleman and passing the savings on to, you know it, us. But they don't compromise on quality either, or ethics. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, which makes me feel even better about my purchases. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/culty for free shipping on your order and a 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/culty to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/culty.
Okay, let's just ditch the grocery store drama and talk about something that actually sparks joy. Hungry Root. Seriously, this is my love letter to the food delivery service that has saved my sanity and my fridge from becoming a weird science experiment. Hungry Root is like having my own personal shopper who gets me. They take all the guesswork out of grocery shopping by filling my cart with healthy options tailored to my tastes and goals. And the best part? I don't know what it is, if it's AI or what, but the more I use it, the better it gets at knowing what I love and what I'm not so crazy about. I'm all about eating clean. If you listen to the podcast, you will know that. But I don't always have the time or energy to figure out the healthiest choices. And Hungry Root does that all for me, from anti-inflammatory snacks to high-protein meals that actually taste amazing. And seriously, who has time to eat their body weight in protein and figure out how to get the groceries in your home to do that? Not me. Hungry Root helps me. And no high-fructose corn syrup or artificial junk, just real nutritious food that keeps me and the family feeling good. And I love how they've got all the options for the whole family, whether it's smoothies for the mornings, kid-friendly snacks that don't come with a sugar rush, or quick dinners that don't require me to be a 5-star chef. Hungry Root has me covered. You're going to love Hungry Root as much as I do. Take advantage of this exclusive offer, and for a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/culty and use code culty. That's hungryroot.com/culty, code culty to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/culty, code culty. Enjoy. This podcast wouldn't even exist without our amazing, supportive, generous patrons. Come find us on Patreon. We are at patreon.com/littlebitculty. Go there for bonus episodes, live Q&As with past guests, exclusive content, and lots of other goodies. Subscribe now and help us keep this podcast going. That's patreon.com/littlebitculty. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you're supporting this podcast. You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to a Little Bit Culty, shall we? So he took the people that he wanted to be around, either for financial or sexual. Are we getting to that? Is there a sexual underpinning to all this that we're going to...
There is a sexual underpinning to all this that we're going to discuss, but I think he just liked being around. It made him look better. You know what I mean? Like if he was around, even the people he deemed or considered awake or enlightened, because he, at some point, you know, some people would be considered free, and then everybody would be like, oh my God, this person is free, so they have a different status, right? Even though you're told they don't, but they do. Most of them are pretty or good looking. So I think it was like a narcissist thing, right? Like they want to just be surrounded with, it's bizarre. It's bizarre.
Bizarre and yet also textbook.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so shocking. It was so shocking to me when I started reading about narcissism, and I was like, oh, holy fuck, this is like, I thought we were so special, you know? and same about cults, like when we were watching The Vow, or when we were watching Holy Hell and all that, and I'm like, there's nothing about us that is unique.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the craziest thing.
The only difference is that our cult is more mediocre because nobody knows us. That's the only difference, you know? Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's the same.
Well, but just before the cult recognition, what were some of the other red flags that propelled you to leave?
Wearing white. And...
Oh, yeah. So the control ramped up. You started wearing white. Did you have to shave your head?
No, I didn't have to shave my head. You weren't, like, the vows are very early on, right? Once you join, you take in a teacher, you ask as a teacher to be your teacher. And then at some point you take your vows and you go through a 3-day silence and fasting. And then you wear white. Most monks start in white because the monks either wear white, red, or black. So it depends on the path you're on. And which is another mind fucker, because everybody wanted black vows and it's supposed to not be special, but also it was. And you wouldn't understand why he would give to some but not to others. Like nothing made sense, and everything he was always excused by, I'm not responsible for what I say or do. I'm just channeling, you know.
Oh my God.
The divinity, right?
Right.
So
he had a direct line to the divine.
Well, he was the embodiment of the divine, but also apparently everybody else that So if you achieved enlightenment, or well, you don't achieve it because you don't exist. So every time I say this, there's always a contradiction, right? Which is part of why nobody ever gets enlightened and they still think they can and they will. But if you're out of the way, if your ego is not in play, it's God acting through you or the divine acting through you. But because he's permanently in that space, he's always channeling the divine, right?
Even when he's riding motorcycles and drinking?
Of course, absolutely. He's always.
Did anyone push back on that?
Some people, I mean, the thing is a lot, and that's one of the things, right? A lot of people didn't know that side of him. A lot of people didn't know he drank as much as he used to. A lot of people didn't know he smoked as much as he used to. We knew because we were in like the inner circle. But a lot of people, of the teachers even out there, they didn't know. They knew he rode motorcycles, but that was just kind of like, he always bragged that up about how cool it is that we're the coolest monks in the world, you know, because we ride motorcycles. Mm-hmm. So I forgot where we were going with.
Well, I was asking if people push back on.
I know in your intake form, you sort of wrote out a lot of the inconsistencies of the spiritual path and how hard it was to stay on it because it was so hypocritical. I almost even want to read it. Tell us some of the other tenets and then the sort of like part that made it like, what does that even mean?
Well, I think a lot of the inconsistencies was that, right? Like you gotta be out of the way. You gotta let God come to you. You gotta get life come to you, but you gotta be proactive and you gotta go out teaching. And I don't want hippie teachers. I don't want teachers that only teach courses. But if you started doing anything else, and if it was mildly like competitive with a meditation technique, then you were off. You were not, that wasn't coming from God. That was coming from your head. So, because a lot of teachers naturally were healers, coaches, people that do this kinds of work, right? Like that's their line. But it was always like they were wrong. And if you couldn't get it, I couldn't explain it to you. You know, like that was his ultimate, like when you were arguing with him going, why is it wrong that I have a coaching business? Honestly, if you can't understand that, I can't explain it to you. Like this is, you know, basically you're stupid. This is beyond. There was a lot of things with emotions. So I'm not telling you not to feel. I never said you don't have to feel. But unless you're experiencing peace, joy, or love, you're really not in the presence of God. So I was always aiming for not having an emotion. I was always aiming for being in joy or love. But when you were like super sad and you were having a problem, he would say, I never tell you not to feel. Who told you that? Where did you get that from? But at the same time, he would say, I don't care how I feel. None of the big teachers you admire care how they feel. So you really never knew. And at the same time, the irony is that it was always the word simple. It's like, he's make it so simple. Everything is so simple in the teaching. You only need to stay here now. And so I don't know if those were the inconsistencies you're talking about, Sarah, but that's what it was. It was for me. It's like, there's things you gotta let go of. You gotta surrender, you know? But sometimes if it's there in your mind over and over and over again, it's because you need to speak it up. But sometimes it's really not because of that. It's you're biting on a thought and you're making something more important than God.
Sounds like there's always going to be a problem, no matter what, right?
Yes.
When you go to solve the problem, there's no real consistent measurement of the problem being solved. So there's a lot of arbitrary, I don't want to call it word salad, but yeah, a lot of arbitrary standards that you're never meeting and they're always changing. So it creates a chaos.
Exactly.
That's very common.
That's very well described.
That's a feature.
But nobody saw it, right? We didn't see it. We just thought, now we're doing this because he's so present. He's so fluid. And the hook, one of the biggest hooks was like, it becomes really into your head that you need a teacher because your mind is so tricky. And if you're left to your own devices, your mind is going to convince you to leave. And you're going to miss out on the opportunity to wake up in this lifetime. That's a pretty fucking big thing to miss out on. And so from that moment forward, every time you have a thought, you doubt about it. You never trust your thoughts. You can't. And if you have issues, you're meant to go and talk to your other fellow teachers, which are called your clearest mirrors. So it's one of the contradiction is that, right? Like on one hand, he was saying, everybody else is God. We are no more important or special than your neighbor, your parents that are not involved in this. But at the same time, if you really want clear advice, talk to your clearest mirrors. They're actually not that conscious. Love them. So it's like this altruistic narcissism, right? Love them. You're not more special, but you are, because you bring hope. And everywhere you're standing, people are remembering their divinity just because of your presence. But you'll never get to a point where you can be left to your own devices because you'll forget. Which for me is like, what the fuck? So you're never actually gonna wake up. Because if I'm wake up from this illusion of the mind, this Maya, and I go do my own thing, I'll forget again. So there's always the danger that you're going to fall asleep again.
So how did you wake up?
Well, fortunately for me, I got kicked out of the cult. I don't know, there's a lot of people that can say that, to be honest. I got to be honest, I didn't leave. He kicked me out. I think I would have left eventually because there was a point where there was a snowball happening. I don't know if you guys had the same experience where it couldn't be stopped. Like no matter what we did, it's like this bigger force came and shit started happening. And there was a whirlwind of a week or two of chaos, and it was inevitable. I couldn't stop it. I tried. I did not want to leave. So what happened was, I think COVID came to bless us all with its presence because there was no retreats. He had no audience. There was no courses. And one of the actual red flags for me that it actually rang as a red flag in the moment was the fact that when lockdowns began, I thought, this is our moment. This is when we teach people these techniques. Like people are suffering in their homes with their minds going crazy. What the fuck? This is our moment. I was so excited. And he sent the instruction that none of us were allowed to teach. Nobody was allowed to teach a technique. And when I confronted him, he said, do you think Jesus would have taught his tradition through the internet? We cannot risk it. Go out there. This is too special.
I think Jesus would have.
I think Jesus would have too.
He would have used the internet.
He would have said, fuck it. I'll do it for free.
Absolutely.
But he didn't want to risk the teachers teaching online because then, he thinks he's bigger than the internet, right? He thinks everything, he'll control everybody.
It's hard to control. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yes. And so honestly, for me, that was a red flag because I was so disappointed and I thought, what the fuck? People are suffering. And people would call me, right? Like my cousin or whatever saying, hey, my mind's going crazy. Can you help me? And I had to say no. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like if without teaching this technique, I have nothing to help this person experience some peace. So I'm a fraud. And I don't even have my own agency to teach these techniques that I trained for, I paid for, and they shouldn't be hidden. Because in that moment, I thought they were so special, right? And nobody was allowed to do any events for money except him. He did. He had his events and all of us had to pay, but we weren't.
But that was online?
Online.
It was online, yeah.
Yes. And so for me, that was the biggest red flag. So anyway, we were all in different parts of the country. Like I was in Mexico, he was in the United States. His roommate would text me every day going, he's a diva, what the hell's going on? He's entitled, he doesn't want to cook, he treats us like shit. And then you would see him online and he would be super happy and like, they're supposed to be fearless, right? These people are supposed to have no fear because there's no past and no future. So what are you afraid of, right? So we eventually all went back to Spain at different stages where our houses were. And really we had nothing to do. And then for me, that started highlighting everything because we had no distraction. We had no retreat to run. Nobody was busy. And I started seeing how controlled we were. I started seeing how the people that lived with him were so scared of him. Like, I gotta go. I gotta cook him lunch. Oh my God. 50-year-old woman couldn't stay out after 9:30 because her husband, who were roommates with him, with Bill, would start calling her going, you know how he gets. You better get home now. And And for me, all these things, I was like, this isn't right. And he started shaming us more. He started shaming everybody around because he had nothing to do, right?
He was all online, shaming you like online, like on videos?
In
Like-
person, because some of us eventually managed to go back to Spain. And so it was a bit further down the road in the pandemic where you could all see each other, which was one of the other things I was so shocked at, because we would be outside and he would wear a face mask, a mask, and like one of those like
Visors?
a visor, and he would, and I'd be like, aren't you supposed to be this like super not scared of anything? And regardless of where you stand with everything that happened, you know, he started doing a lot of coercive control for you to take his measurements. So if you didn't want to get vaccinated, like that was my choice, he then fired me from the team because he couldn't have people risk somebody else. And so it was this, you can do whatever you want, but if you're not vaccinated, you can't come to see me. And so for me, that was the line, because I thought, this is my body. I don't have to ask you permission or what you think, because that's one of the things with the teacher. You ask him if things serve you. You know, does it serve me to marry this guy? Does it serve me to take this job? But I was like, this is my body. You have no agency. So I think that's when I started rebelling again. And I had a lot of anxiety, increasing forever. I had panic. I couldn't leave my house without having a panic attack. So I started looking for therapy. And thank God I found a very good therapist. And I think that helped me massively to start opening my eyes to what was going on. So it was like that's when I started really seeing the red flags. That's when I would go to the meetings, because we would have meetings because we run all these things that everybody thinks are so important. And it was always changing these teams. And one time I did this organizational chart because it was always such a mess. You never knew who to talk to.
Oh, org chart. We had an org chart.
A what?
Right, remember?
Oh, yeah.
We call it the org chart, the organizational
org chart.
chart. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I did one because I was like, this is a mess. And he was like, oh, of course, do it, sweetie. I'm really looking forward to see what you come up with. And when I did this chart, every single person of the teams went through him. Everyone, single one of us, he was the center, and you all communicated with him. And then he was supposed to tell somebody else. And when I presented that to him, I thought, hey, it's an easier way of doing it. You don't have to be involved in everything. Because he was always complaining about how nobody can do anything without him. Of course, later I realized that's how he wanted it, right? He wanted to have his eyes on the pies, like his fingers on every pie, and to freaking triangulate everything. So this is all happening at the same time. I'm getting therapy. I'm starting to get better with my anxiety. Like, this technique helped me. Like, after the first session, I had no panic attacks anymore. And so I knew I was onto something good for my nervous system. But maybe in the third, fourth session, my therapist was inquiring. She was trying to find out if one of my parents was a narcissist, because I had all the symptoms of narcissistic abuse. It wasn't until later that I realized that the narcissistic abuse was coming from my teacher, not from my parents.
Wow.
So he kicked me of this cult because, well, first he fired me from my job. He said, you think what you do is so important, but it's not. And I don't want you to do anything else except translation, which is what I hated. I hated translating for the last years. And he knew that, right? So he's like, I just want you to translate. I said, well, let me think about it. But like the way he fired me, and he got two of his flying monkeys to tell me horrible things about me and my character, I had a meltdown, and I had an emergency therapy session. And in this therapy session, I was telling the therapist, because we were talking about forgiveness. But the technique is not about forgiving, but it's like what things you would have to forgive him. And I told her what had happened in 2 occasions when he was drunk, and how he got like handsy with me and he tried to kiss me. And it was like these things that happened years before I'm telling this, right, for the first time. And my therapist said, this is called sexual harassment. And when I heard that, it's like when the mirror broke. That moment where everything starts cracking inside and your your whole system just comes down crumbling. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, it's true. Like, this guy sexually harassed me and I kept it quiet I wanted to protect my fiance from his relationship with his teacher. I didn't want to taint it. I didn't want to taint anybody else's experience. So only my best friend knew. And one of my friends, that she was with me the first time he harassed me. And we had to hide. So he would go upstairs to his hotel room. And then she confessed to me that he had done the same to her a few times. And we decided to confront him. And this is the part of the fucking programming that happens, you guys, is like, we decide to confront him. Once we decide that, our tension in our bodies goes. And so we go, oh, it's gone now. We let it go. There's no point of bringing it back up.
Sorry, just to clarify, were you confronted him at the time or you confronted him after the therapy session?
I didn't confront him ever.
Oh.
When it happened, so a quick timeline, like it happened maybe 4 years before I left.
Right.
Once, and then 3 years. So 2 times he harassed me. And I never told anybody. Me and my friend who were there decided to confront him back then, 4 years ago, 4 years before. Once we made the decision of telling him, we feel peace. We as monks, we take it as, it's gone now. We don't have to pick this up again.
Right.
We don't want to embarrass him. He might not remember. He's really drunk.
Mm-hmm. So you're protecting your fiance, protecting the image of the organization, protecting yourself from having to actually confront him because you don't need to anymore because you feel fine about it.
Exactly. I feel fine, and he probably didn't mean it. And obviously now I understand that what it would have meant for me to confront him, it means everything I've stand for needs to be evaluated, right? Everything that I believe about him and about this teaching needs to be evaluated, and I was not ready to do that.
No.
Yeah, so you minimize the abuse.
I minimized the abuse. I justified it. I let it go. Nobody ever knew except my best friend, who's not my best friend anymore because she's still in the cult and she stopped talking to me, which, yeah, it's horrible. But, he won that battle. So fast forward, I face it. Finally, 4 years later, I face it with my therapist, and she makes it. She's the one that kind of gives me the delay. Like, this is not a little thing. This is called sexual harassment. Right. And so, as luck has it, my fiance back then, who's now my husband, was walking to the bathroom. So he heard his name because I said, I never told Sandy this. That's his name, right? So as a good husband, he heard what I had to say. And so he confronted me. So long story short, we talked about it. Me and my husband, we talked about it at length. I apologized. And he sent an email to Bill. He confronted him. He said, I'm hearing this about my wife. This is not the first time I hear this, by the way. I've heard it about other people. But this time it's in my house. And you did this while she was already my girlfriend. And so basically, 24 hours later, he sent me a text message. Bill sent me a text message, and he fired me from the Bright Path, saying I was no longer.
So he'd already fired you from your job, and now he's firing you from the whole thing.
Yes. So he fired me from my job. That prompted like a crisis in me where I accept he sexually harassed me. And then my husband learns about it. He sends him an email. And then his reaction to that email was firing me as a student and a teacher, like basically you're gone. Which, by the way, in the last 10 years, I've discussed with him that was my biggest, deepest fear, to be exiled. So he obviously used it. So that's when I got out.
So from there, because I know you lived close to him and everyone was in this little community, did you just pack up and leave? What was the exit like?
No, we stayed there for a year. It was at the beginning.
Year.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm
Why
glad
so
we
long?
did. Well, A, that was our house. That was our home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
B, other of our friends that lived there also left. That was the life we knew, right? This was our best friends. And suddenly, overnight, we lost half of our community or more. And we didn't know where to go. Obviously, we traveled. We came to Mexico. We were looking somewhere to live. We were trying to find a beach place or maybe move to the UK. My husband's from Scotland. So we were looking around, but we didn't move officially for a whole year. It was eye-opening to stay there. and to see the type of humans this teaching creates, which was ultimately my biggest red flag. My biggest aha moment was like, I don't want to become that type of person. Like, if this teaching, how sacred can this teaching be if it allows somebody like that to be at the top, and everybody else that is supposed to be the most dedicated, committed students, they lied, they denied, they attacked, they censored people, and everything on the name of God or silence, as we called it, right? We didn't call it really God, we called it silence. So we're not gossiping here. Why are you trying to find out what happened to her? And the fact that some of these people knew I wasn't lying and decided to stay, I was like, this teaching doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It does not create these superhumans.
It creates obedient people.
It creates obedient people and people that are willing to tell themselves whatever to remain, right? To protect him.
When you were there, and in that 1 year, were you still interacting with the current members?
Yeah, what was that like?
Like, or were they like ignoring you on the street, or like how did that work?
Yeah, they were pretty much, I mean, they would ignore us, I would say. We didn't really run into them that much. They don't leave their house. I don't know if they do now, but like none of them actually leave their house. It's a very strange lifestyle. So if I was going for a walk, I wouldn't do it on my own. That was the thing. I was scared. And they're not violent, right? They're more like, we don't pay attention to bad things and we just ignore everybody. But I was still scared. So I would always walk with my friend or with my husband. But I rarely run into them. So it was really stressful energetically because you're like, you know they're your neighbors and you know they're there and you run out of eggs and now you can't go to their house to ask for them, but it was really good for me, at least, to stay around other people that had left and we could really defragment and really start picking out all the pieces and analyzing every single aspect of this, because I really did not want to walk away and move on without getting to the root of why I joined in the first place.
Hmm. And how did you get there to the root?
Through a lot of therapy, conversations, books, reading about cults, and I put everything in. I stopped meditating. I stopped meditating because in my particular perspective, and I've wrestled a lot with this, right? Like if the technique is good, but the guy that created it is rotten, what do you do, right? And you can allegate like, well, you still use electricity and that guy wasn't so good or whatever. But for me, this is about human nature. These techniques are about your soul, are about your humanness, your divinity, if you will. Why the fuck would I practice something that was created by people that harmed others? So I stopped everything and I started really looking into, okay, the teaching, is it real or not? The techniques, the groups, cults. I didn't want to just think Billy was the bad guy and everything else was good, because that's the case, right? That's the case for some people that have left. They think, and that's their perspective, that Billy got rogue and everything else was holy. But that's not my opinion.
Well, let me ask you a question. What do you do with it? What about the good and all that stuff? If it's created by that mind that's maniacal, I think for me, it's all going to be somewhat tainted because it has the intent to coerce you. And you need to figure out how the coercion starts. And ultimately, what I've concluded is that he just used principles and altruism as a means to ensnare people and then coerce them into his vision for your life.
Yes, absolutely.
Something along those lines. So,
yeah, something along those lines. Exactly. Yeah. I think there's a lot of half-truths, right? And a lot of principles that are good. Like spirituality, it's everywhere, right? Like it's universal. But I feel, because of what you're saying, Nipi, like everything needs to be reviewed and taken super deep, like not just assume it's true because this person that you trusted told you, but because you have to investigate this for yourself. And for me personally, I'm just beginning to put my toes in some spiritual notions again, because I was like, ugh, Don't talk to me about anything spiritual. Don't even mention the word meditation or like even, I don't know, sound healing things, because I don't want to know.
Well, there can be dark spirituality too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Look at like Santeria, right? And so this particular teaching was really shiny. It was all, everybody's happy. We're happy. We're a happy family. We don't judge. We just praise and laugh all day. But it's so dark because people aren't free. We're absorbed. Our spirit is completely abducted.
For more background on what brought us here, check out Sarah's page-turning memoir. It's called Scarred, The True Story of How I Escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. Highly recommend, of course, because she's my wife. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. Remember, when you support our sponsors, you support our podcast.
Okay, let's just ditch the grocery store drama and talk about something that actually sparks joy. Hungry Root. Seriously, this is my love letter to the food delivery service that has saved my sanity and my fridge from becoming a weird science experiment. Hungry Root is like having my own personal shopper who gets me. They take all the guesswork out of grocery shopping by filling my cart with healthy options tailored to my tastes and goals. And the best part? I don't know what it is, if it's AI or what, but the more I use it, the better it gets at knowing what I love and what I'm not so crazy about. I'm all about eating clean. If you listen to the podcast, you will know that. But I don't always have the time or energy to figure out the healthiest choices. And Hungry Root does that all for me, from anti-inflammatory snacks to high-protein meals that actually taste amazing. And seriously, who has time to eat their body weight in protein and figure out how to get the groceries in your home to do that? Not me. Hungry Root helps me. And no high-fructose corn syrup or artificial junk, just real, nutritious food that keeps me and the family feeling good. And I love how they've got all the options for the whole family, whether it's smoothies for the mornings, kid-friendly snacks that don't come with a sugar rush, or quick dinners that don't require me to be a 5-star chef. Hungry Root has me covered. You're going to love Hungry Root as much as I do. Take advantage of this exclusive offer, and for a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/culty and use code culty. That's hungryroot.com/culty, code culty to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/culty, code culty. Enjoy.
I love a little luxury in my life. Who doesn't? But let's be honest. Luxury usually comes with a pretty steep price tag. That is until I discovered Quince. It's quickly become our go-to for high-quality essentials that don't break the bank. I'm talking about the 100% Mongolian cashmere sweater that started at just $50. For 2 months of winter here, I've been living in mine. It's soft, cozy, but I still look like a super hot dad in it. I also grabbed some performance wear, and let me tell you, I am obsessed with my performance tech shorts. Bought 2 of them, great for shooting hoops with my son, and kind of looking cool, if I say so myself. And that's really the best part about Quince. Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They partner directly with top factories, cutting out the middleman and passing the savings on to, us. But they don't compromise on quality either, or ethics. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, which makes me feel even better about my purchases. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/culty for free shipping on your order and a 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/culty to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/culty. Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
In your journey, when did the word cult come into your awareness?
I'd say like maybe a week or 2 after we left.
Oh, wow.
I mean, of course we've heard, right? Like people would call it, friends would call it, oh, you're cult. And I'd be like, ah, ha, ha. But as I'm sure you've heard before,
yes.
we always heard the whole, when somebody tells you you're in a cult, you said, well, at least I'm in a happy cult. My cult is happy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I thought it was so unique to the Ishayas, but it turns out it wasn't. So of course I heard that before, right? But actually opening my eyes, was maybe 2 weeks after we left. We watched Holy Hell, was the first documentary we watched. And that's when it started going like, oh my God. And then not many days after, somebody sent one of your episodes to our group, one of your episodes, I think it was the one about TM precisely. And that's when we were like, holy fuck, this is a cult. Like it's a textbook cult. And I started getting and researching what it meant to be in a cult. And everything fits, every single aspect fits. And it's just really subtle. So, they don't control your sexuality, but you're not meant to have sex unless you're in a committed relationship. They don't control your clothes because you can wear whatever you want. But when you're teaching, you have to wear white. There's an us versus them mentality, but it's really subtle, as we discussed, right? It's more like, it's not like don't talk to anybody else. It's like you're more conscious than them. So you always, you always talk
Some
to your
righteousness.
You always talk to your normal friends with this like, oh, they're so in their mind, poor guys,
Yeah.
And you feel so good about yourself because you're not. You're enlightened. Oh, the fucker. Yeah, I know.
I told you, I'm a
All right,
Mexican
so
doppelganger.
I want to hear how about the punches you threw.
Yeah, and how did you get out 200 teachers?
Well, as I said, it was a week of events that happened. So the first thing that happened that helped us leave, I think, was the main center where we ran the retreats. He terminated his relationship with them because they didn't want to obey his rules on COVID vaccinations. And so he finished this 10-year relationship in a day. So he's like, okay, I no longer want to work with you guys, fuck off. And then that night he has a meeting with teachers. And he's telling everybody how excited he is that this relationship had ended because it was so difficult and how he's so ready to move on. So in the past, I thought he's so present. He doesn't suffer, right? He doesn't dwell on things. He moves on. Now I know he has no empathy and he's only he discards people, right? But that rubbed a lot of teachers the wrong way. Going, why are you talking ill about people that served you for so many years, right? So that kind of did this volcano where teachers started calling us and going, what the hell's going on over there? Is he okay? Why is he being weird? So that helped. Because when I got fired, I was in so many teams, they had to announce I was gone. And so I kept it quiet for a while, right? And then my husband left the next day. And then Bill released an audio saying a lot of teachers that were conspiracy theorists were about to leave or were leaving this organization. And he wanted them to go because they were like a danger for the organization, which was a very clever move. Because then when they start seeing names dropping, some teachers just assume, oh, they're conspiracy theories, I don't care about them. So then what happens is some of the main teachers left in the same week, which were our best friends. Because as I said, it was like a communal thing that started bubbling up, right? Where we could not deal with the bullshit anymore. And also the old secrets started coming up.
Right.
Right? Like all this sexual harassment, I would be telling the others that had been there for longer than me going, what the fuck did you guys do when you find out about this? That he was grabbing women and telling them names and they were like, we did nothing. So we started leaving and they started leaving. And so there's a lot of events that happened that led to him release an audio about the sexual harassment. And it was a very stupid move because he thought I was going to tell everybody. And at that point, I didn't want to tell anybody. I wanted to leave. The first thoughts, I just want to live my own life. I'm not going to do anything. I just want to, be happy. I want to move on. So one day I'm in England because we went there to just kind of get some distance and people started calling me going, what the fuck? Are you listening to this? Are you listening to this? And I said, well, I'm not a teacher anymore. I don't have access to these things, right? So people start sending me this 1 hour video he sent, video or audio, I can't remember, where he's trying to get the first one off me and he's like, there's a student saying I sexually harassed her. And he gives his version of the story, which is all lies from beginning to end. Nothing he says is true. And that's when I'm like, he's a fucking sociopath. This is reality. He's making up stories. And he tried to portray me as she's so much suffering I try to help her through her anxiety and her pain. When in that world, then you're not still, you're not conscious if you've been suffering, right? What he missed to say is that his bad advice for 8 years never told me it was anxiety, and I kept trying on my own to get rid of this feeling that was getting in the way of me and God, right? And that's something maybe you can address, because the mental health and what happens in that place and the effects it's got on mental health people, it's one of like the worst aspects.
I'll just address it quickly, just to say that a lot of people like yourself probably join to get healing from those feelings, myself included, and then you learn how to spiritually bypass.
Yes.
And just
and disconnect from yourself.
Freeze and disconnect from those feelings.
Disassociate.
Disassociate, and then you think that you're healed, but you're not.
Exactly, because you can move your attention, right? So I did that for years, and many people did that too. And the thing is, the first 8 years where I was there, he kept saying, you don't need therapy. You don't need therapy. And he would make fun of psychologists and psychiatrists, because depression is just looking to the past and anxiety is just looking on the future. And so he only changed his narrative in the last years, where younger people were joining and were accusing him and the company of not knowing how to deal with mental health. So they erased all the YouTube videos when he talks about you don't need therapy. And then he always would do this. When did I ever say this? Of course you need therapy.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck, dude? We were there. His favorite phrase was, I never said that. Like any other narcissist.
That's a narcissist. I never said that.
Quality.com.
Oh, so funny. So anyway, a lot of people, like including myself, suffer through mental health issues because I was just told it was energy, right? And I was always like, why am I so intense? Why do I feel things so intensely? Why am I so full of emotion? Why can't I just be like them? And I didn't know that level of intensity was because of anxiety. And the first time I researched on Google what is anxiety was 8 years into having general anxiety, and I didn't know. And his advice was always like, lean into God. Just let it go. Just watch this happen. So anyway, in this audio, right, he's talking about how much he tried to help me, but he's not saying that his help was arrogant, ignorant, negligent, and that it led me to agoraphobia for a year, And I'm not the only one, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the audio, then more people leave, and then you've left. So from this audio that he sent, a lot of people started calling me every minute. Like for a week, I had no rest because people wanted to hear my truth, my side of the story, because he thought he was so sleek and clever, but a lot of people got through the bullshit, right? They said, this doesn't sound right. And actually, they said, like, you wouldn't lie, And I happen to know a lot of people because I traveled with him all over translating for him, right? So I knew most teachers. I knew more teachers than many other teachers. Well, his other mistake was not creating some sort of system like with NXIVM. Most people who stayed didn't reach out to me for my side of the story because as soon as I left, I was considered.
It's a numbers game at that point. He's gonna retain who he's gonna retain, and then the people that doubt him are gonna go talk to you. And I'm sure he knew he was gonna have some attrition, probably not as much as he thought, and he's just gonna keep moving forward. And then if you guys can somehow get in his way, you can, but he'll keep doing it, and he'll either get old and die, or it'll blow up in his face. That's pretty much the trajectory of how these things work.
There's always people that stay loyal no matter what. But he wasn't smart enough to to do some sort of built-in thing where people would feel bad to contact you. But to have 200 people leave, that's great.
Yeah, it was great, and it was really not what we were aiming. Like, I wish I had said, I'm gonna take people with me, but I just started trying to defend myself. So after a few days of telling my story to every single person, I thought, fuck this shit. Like, I need to talk. And I also had I felt responsible because I knew many times where he had lied and I had concealed it, right? So when you leave, people start confiding in you. How many other teachers were accused of sexual harassment and he pushed it under the rug? How many other teachers were accused of things and these teachers were still teaching, right? And so I thought, So not even me. You'd realize there's an inner circle within the inner circle within the inner circle, and there's always a smallest circle that you were not privy to certain conversations. But many times I heard him lie and I kept quiet. And so I wrote an email, a very long email, telling my side of the story, as much detail as I could. And when I wrote the email, 80 teachers had left already. And after I'd sent the email, I think the total was almost 250, 260 teachers.
Wow.
And I thought that was great.
Yeah. Where is it now? What's the status of everything now?
I think they're still teaching. I think it's way smaller. They still have maybe 250 teachers.
Where's Billy?
Well, Billy, one of the moves he did when this whole thing was happening, that's he promoted himself by retiring. So one day,
Smart move.
Yeah, very smart move.
Maybe he pushed him into retirement.
I think so. He got an act of contrition and he said, I have to retire now. What he did was, after one of my friends sent an email with the facts of how he was lying, the next day he came out and said, you guys have made a decision. I am retiring. I'm no longer going to take students. And he appointed 5 or 6 new teachers that could take students. But he would be the teacher of them. And if you wanted to be a big T teacher, as he calls them, you had to be his student, not theirs. So in a way, he promoted himself. But a lot of teachers were like, oh, he's so humble. He knew it was time to step out. It's ridiculous. I mean...
We put another barrier in front of him.
Yeah, exactly. And when I'm like, these teachers that you appointed as teachers that are teaching others to transcend illusion are people that betrayed me, that lied to my face, that are lying to everybody because they know it's true what I said, because I confided in them and they said, yes, we know he's done that before. And when it actually came public, they denied it. They were like, no, that never happened. For me, that's why I'm doing this, you know what I mean? Because it's like, there's people out there with genuine hearts looking for a spiritual path, looking for doing good in the world. And if they fall into this scam where they think these people are enlightened just because they smile a lot and they have no integrity and no spine. So I just hope somebody doesn't join because they hear me out.
I hope so too. Well, we're also happy to be,
Well, can you Google him? Is there negative stuff online about him that you Google that comes up? Are there things in place that people can be warned?
There's a lot of information in the cult forum because I know there was a case of suicide a while ago before my time that created a lot of waves. And that's happened, right? Like during my time, there was 2 or 3 people that committed suicide.
All of them have people that commit suicide around them.
And you know how it is, right? Like, oh, they already had problems, which is bullshit. And so in the cult forum, it's what I know. Like I always just kind of type in the Bright Path cult because we as teachers were not allowed to Google that because we don't want to give power to the websites, right? It's always like that. You don't really want to research other books of enlightenment because you'll get confused.
Do you believe everything you read online? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is just like people that are angry, They want to take us down.
Exactly.
Yes, we do. I know you've done a lot, but we're getting close. We're way past time. So if you can summarize your healing journey in a few sentences.
Wow. Yeah. I think the most important thing for me was being willing to be destroyed for a very long time. I saw my need immediately to try to get on another surfboard. I remember when we left, it was like 3 a.m. and we were in shock, right? Fight or flight, our bodies, me and my husband. And I remember it was 3 a.m. and we held hands and he actually said the word, we got out. And it felt like we were on a boat and the ocean was dark and there was nowhere to go. And I was so fucking scared because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know. I had nothing. And I was willing to remain there. And so for me, my healing was about befriending my shadow. because that's what we were not allowed for years, right? This is all toxic positivity. Don't pay attention to what you don't want kind of thing. And for me, it was like, I realized how scared I was of my emotions. And that's why I had so much anxiety, right? Because I was just suppressing so much shit. Because I always felt my emotions would kill me. This is way before the cult, right? Like my nervous system was dysregulated. And so I started being willing for the emotions to take me where I had to go. And luckily, I already was training to do this therapy that helped me so much. So that community helped me a lot to remain objective, to hear feedback that wasn't from just the cult members or ex-cult members. And honestly, to keep balancing like my nervous system. So my healing internally was very much about bringing my nervous system back to baseline, whatever that took, and addressing all my trauma from childhood. Every single thing that during the cult, I was like, I don't need to look at that because it's past. And of course, there was some times, and as you know, Sarah, like I emailed you a year and a half ago, right? When I was like, I'm so scared, but I also I didn't feel stable yet. And not everybody has the fortune of having as you guys know, like a partner that went through the same thing that is a huge support. And sometimes we had to take turns on the healing. Sometimes he had to hold me, and sometimes I had to hold him, because it would recovering our identity. That's what it was for me. That's what it's been, and it still is. Like, who am I? So I know some people that they've called skip therapy. I wouldn't. I know not all therapy is great, but I would find something that works, because I don't see how you can like completely uncult yourself or decult yourself if you don't do that.
I know you mentioned the word therapy community. How do you make sure that you're joining something safe on the other side?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it is, right? Because at most, we know the famous word, nobody joins like a cult, right? You always think you're joining a good community. But for me, at least now, and the way, this therapist's community, I'm not required anything. I can join, hear a masterclass whenever I want. Nobody's after me. I don't have to pay anything. And the creator of this technique, or the teacher of this technique, she never asked anything from me. I got my qualifications. I trained. If I want to keep training, I can join an advanced course. If I don't, I'm still allowed to do the therapy because I'm already qualified.
There's no coercion.
There's no coercion.
Right.
And it's healthy. I don't ever feel I have to sacrifice my autonomy. I have to not say something that I think for the good of the group. And I think that's a very good marker, right? Like when you start noticing that you're keeping quiet, you're sacrificing your own well-being for the greater good, I think then you're into something culty.
Yeah, if you can't question. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Such good advice.
Yeah. All the red flags.
Yeah. Well, we know so many of our listeners, like yourself, are ex-members who also want to heal.
But it's always interesting to hear someone's case of them come to the conclusions of the red flags that we've kind of accumulated over the years. Every story comes to it case by case and with a different kind of wisdom to it.
And flavor, which brings us to what you said on your intake sheet. This is a vanilla cult. Like, there's no branding. There's no
Code
sex
for
harem.
Billy cult.
Yeah, we caught him lip syncing. What are you going to do? But expose that.
Exactly. But yeah, that's what this was so hard. And I think it's still hard for the people that are in it to see and realize you are actually in a cult, because nothing too big ever happens, right? Nobody raped anybody. They just wanted to kiss you. Nobody did drugs. They just drink a lot. Nobody, they don't take away all your money, just some of it. So, but the bottom line is your mind's still abducted. Like you're not free.
Yes.
When I talked to one of my old friends, and she's still in, I think, when we were talking about the sexual harassment, she said to my face, "I'm sorry it happened to you, but it didn't happen to me."
Oh, we've heard that.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then my husband was like, so if you hear he murdered somebody, you'll be like, oh, I'm sorry he murdered him, but he didn't murder me, so I'm good. You know what I mean? And I was like, and that's when for me, is the red flags was just after I left. I was like, we're trained to not see any fault. in this, and that's a very dangerous place to be, you know, when you don't question your teaching, because every question, it comes from your ego.
But yeah, you're not calling the shots anymore. Once you've gotten there, you're not calling the shots.
And you'll let anything go. Yeah. And that's what your husband was trying to point out. You can let go of that, but like, are you going to let go of murder? Where's the line? And I remember Nippy even asking people who were willing to talk to us, only a handful, when we were leaving. And Nippy, what did you say? Was it to Mark? And you were like, what's your line? Like, at what point do you say, no, this is not okay for me? Because right now there's no bar. Like, yeah,
like, how do you know if you play this pattern out and he's branding women, what's next?
And when do you say this isn't okay?
And there will be a next. He will turn the volume up. They always do. And we subsequently learned that the volume had been turned up previously. We were just hearing it at a different level for the first time.
Exactly.
Except for Billy. Yeah. He didn't turn the volume up. He retired.
He did. He retired.
Well, I don't think he retired. I think he put another barrier of filters in between them.
Yeah, it's true. It was a faux retirement.
Protect him.
Yeah, he promoted himself. Now he's the teacher of teachers of teachers.
Yeah, he downsized. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, he actually used that as a new promotion. Like, we are now going boutique.
Billy's boutique.
I hope he listens to this. And
we'll send it to him.
Billy, you're a fraud. Okay, in my opinion, allegedly. What are you doing? Because you're writing a book.
Yes, I am writing a book. Very early stages, because I've been really, really slow at this. So I'm pretty much in the intro, and I've started and stopped several times because I'm working on the angle, right? So sometimes I think, a memoir is better, and then I go, no, I'll just write some fiction, but I want to get the story out, and I want to get not so much my story, because that's the catalyst, right? But like what I've learned, what I've seen, what I've observed about cults and about narcissism and about vanilla cults, because as we know, it's full of them. The yoga world and
cult of one.
The cult of one, yeah. And even like couples.
Yeah. Did you hear our episode with Jarette Bouillon called The Everyday Cult?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I consider her a good friend of mine. She's helped me a lot. We've done some sessions. I met her through a free writing thing, and we've connected so well. And she's also been helping me and my husband with our podcast. So I love her book, and we have we have a lot in common.
Yeah. That's a great friendship to have, because you both dabble in the thing that the other person escaped from, so you can have safe conversations about, when is this okay? When is it not okay? And so the podcast is going to drop when?
Soon. We
funny story.
Funny story. Do you want to tell it?
Well, I wasn't sure if it had dropped yet, so I went to search for it, and then I found and she told me it was called Unculted, which is a great title, and I found another podcast hosted by someone named Cristina that's not yours, about a Christian cult that this person escaped from. So you might be renaming it.
We have to, right? Like, we came up with this title in May, and we did the website and all the research in June, and we've just been getting back on our feet. We already have recorded our intro and everything. We have a trailer, but then today, just before this interview, Sarah bears the good news that there's
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm glad we didn't put it out without knowing, right? We're very interested in that post-cult life, right?
Post-cult life.
Yes. Well, my husband just sent me this image. So he came up with a new title. It's called Cult Detox.
I like that too.
I don't mind that. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so many cult podcasts out there, and what's going to make this one different, right? So focusing specifically on...
I would go look at all the other cult podcasts and see where you can find a lane.
Well, we did, we have, and we think what's different, but maybe we've not seen them all, is precisely because we want to talk about what deprograms you. How do you get back? We want to cover a lot about therapy and about highlighting the things that bind your mind and how to free yourself from that. So not so much about, true crime or cult stories, but more like when we interview guys. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you how.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. I know I wouldn't put you on the spot otherwise. We want to ask you, how did you heal? Right? How did you as a couple healed as well?
Yeah. I would focus on
I
that.
think
That's my
good.
unsolicited advice. Is
Cult
like
detox. I like
don't
that.
even
That's
don't
the
even have like if it's somebody like me, don't even have me tell my story because it's already out there. And you could even do that in the introduction, like go watch The Vow, read Sarah's book. She was da 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 da. Sarah, welcome to the show. How did you heal? Like, don't even get into the story because you don't have not gonna have time.
Yeah.
This is my answer.
Thank you.
Yeah,
My next
I like
podcast
that.
is called Unsolicited Advice. By
I
the way.
love
Yeah.
it.
I just sit there and nod.
I would love to be in that too because I love to give unsolicited advice.
Yes.
As my
well,
husband.
this is probably why you were a good teacher / monk.
Exactly. Ex-monk.
Well,
Ex-monk.
please reach out to us if you need help. I think we should keep this part of the conversation in
Yeah, sure. I
because I
agree.
think it's,
I agree.
People need to know
It's a little BTS.
a little behind the scenes.
Little BTS.
And part of healing, at least for us, certainly has been doing the podcast, as I'm sure it will be for you. And the best part, I think, is that you get to have conversations and record them and learn from them yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, and then share them with other people.
Also, Christina, one of the things too that like when I look at the last 20 years of my life, when I was in, quote, the cult, I had a lot of really interesting conversations with really interesting people, thousands of them over the course of however many years. I'm continuing to do that in this second act, so to speak,
Yeah.
on a podcast.
I love that.
With
Thank
interesting
you.
people and extracting knowledge, story, and wisdom from them. And I get to actually have a body of work with that. It doesn't go into the ether, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's the fun part about it.
Yeah, that's very valuable because it's part of the things, as I'm sure you guys too, like you miss is, or I miss is the community aspect of it, right? And not everybody was interesting or fun. Some very, very weirdos as any other cult.
Yeah.
So some I was relieved I never had to see again, but a lot of
Same.
them I miss and I still
Yes.
miss. And I wish they weren't abducted so I could talk to them. But I miss
That day will
that.
come.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah. So I miss that. I miss that those interactions and that getting like wisdom from all over around the world and learning. So that's a good outlook to have on the podcast.
Christina, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know it's been many, many conversations over Instagram over the past year and a half, and we really appreciate you supporting us and Patreon and hope that we can support you in your next endeavors.
Thank you so much.
Do you like what you hear on A Little Bit Culty? Then please do give us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or even better, share this episode with someone who you think needs to hear it. Maybe they're in a cult. Maybe they're a little bit susceptible. Just share the love. Thanks. Thanks for coming on the show, Christina. It was so wonderful to finally connect with you. This conversation is a good reminder that culty control isn't always so obvious.
You guys would have been friends in NXIVM.
We
for
would,
sure.
and I would have absolutely recruited her into NXIVM had I met her.
Is it BFFs? Is that the term we're looking at
Yes,
here?
she is a bright light, and I would have wanted her on Team Humanity. But she was building her own humanity
Well, it's a
with the bright
reminder,
path.
everyone, when someone promises a path to enlightenment, keep your boundaries and listen to your gut. Something feels off. Probably is, right?
Probably is. Yep. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with Amphibian Media. Our co-creator is Jess Temple Tardy, audio engineering by Red Cayman Studios, and our writing and research is done by Emma Deal and Kristen Reeder. Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslin.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.